3 miles above the earth, Sarah Jennings was plummeting through a silent void where the air was too thin to scream. Her lungs burned with the sharp, metallic taste of high-altitude air, and a crushing pressure squeezed her chest. But the true horror wasn't the fall itself. It was the faint, rhythmic scratching sound that began to echo inside her helmet. It was a sound that didn't belong in the sky. A dry, persistent, rasp-like claws on polished glass. With each passing second, the scratching grew more frantic, syncing with the hammering of her own heart. And in that moment of utter helplessness, Sarah realized the freezing sheath of ice encasing her suit, the very thing seizing her joints, was the only barrier between her and the source of that awful noise. The entity trying to consume her was trapped in the same frozen prison, and its desperate struggle to get in was the only thing slowing her descent. To survive the impact, she would have to pray the ice held long enough for the creature inside to die first. No parachute, no hope. The earth accelerated toward her at terminal velocity. The roar of rushing air filled her ears, smelling of ozone and cold altitude. Every muscle seized in primal terror as the ground resolved into individual trees. Impact was inevitable. Consciousness narrowed to the final breath. And then she landed, not with a sickening crunch, but with a soft, impossible whump. Investigators found her conscious, whispering two words over and over: "My shadow." It caught me. To understand the fall, you have to understand Sarah. Before that day, she was just a librarian in her late 20s, smiling as she organized books in the local library. Sarah Jennings lived a quiet life in Marfa, Texas, as the town librarian, a woman who found solace in the structured order of fiction. In books, stories obeyed rules, and endings provided closure. A stark contrast to the unsettling whispers that sometimes drifted through her stacks after hours. Her friends, Mike the mechanic and Chloe the cafe owner, knew her as thoughtful and reserved, yet fiercely kind beneath her quiet exterior. Little did they realize how deeply she craved that fictional order, or what stirred when the real world's rules began to fray. Sarah possessed a peculiarity she never discussed, a secret she kept locked away. Walking home at dusk, her shadow stretched long behind her. But something was wrong with that shadow. It moved with a subtle, unsettling lag, a fraction out of sync with her steps. There was a half-second delay in Sarah's shadow's movements. It wasn't a faithful companion, but a sluggish echo. It clung to stair steps she'd already ascended, and it stubbornly held the shape of a coffee cup she'd long since put down. Doctors dismissed it as a rare neurological glitch, a harmless disconnect between perception and reality. They called it a simple lag, but Sarah knew it as her sticky shadow, an unsettling presence that clung to her senses. It left her feeling ungrounded, as if the world and her place within it were caught in a subtle, persistent delay. Every moment carried a faint, metallic scent, and the sensation of damp, cold air brushing her skin, a reality just out of reach. The short hop from El Paso to Dallas was meant to take just an hour, a routine commuter flight that Sarah had dreaded from the moment she booked it. She gripped the armrest, knuckles white, as the plane shuddered through pockets of rough air. Her gaze kept drifting to the wing outside, watching it flex and tremble with each jolt. Every bump in the atmosphere tightened the knot in her stomach, a raw, visceral fear that she couldn't shake. Her disconnect from the earth mirrored her own untethered state. Then, at 26,000 feet, catastrophe struck. A catastrophic decompression tore through the cabin. The roar was not mechanical, but biblical, a sound of primal rending. The aircraft violently disintegrated. A final, agonized metallic shriek was swallowed by sudden, absolute silence. Then came the thin, razor-sharp scream of the stratospheric wind. Still harnessed to a row of seats, Sarah tumbled through a spinning panorama of terror, a dizzying carousel of blinding white cloud and bottomless blue abyss. In that thin, burning cold, the final, undeniable truth crystallized. The 3-minute descent to certain death felt eternal. Sarah's ragged, oxygen-starved breaths were the only sound in the void. But as she tumbled, a metallic scent of ozone filled her nostrils, and she noticed something impossible: her own shadow, cast upward against the clouds. It wasn't below her on the distant, curved earth. It was around her. A dark, smoky silhouette of her own form clung to her body like a second skin, but it was expanding. As she fell, her shadow wasn't falling with her. It was falling for her. Sarah's frantic breath carved a void in the rushing air, a dark, human-shaped pocket directly beneath her. Sarah, it's waiting. It's always been waiting for me to catch up. The shadow beneath her deepened, its form gaining a dreadful substance beyond mere absence of light. Science had no answer for what followed. It simply left her there. Her struggle ceased entirely, replaced by a chilling, alien instinct. She surrendered to the plummet, limbs splayed wide against the rushing void. Her body became a weapon, a living projectile aimed with terrible precision. The strange, lagging darkness of her own essence gathered and sharpened, pointing like a spear at the earth. Fields became roads. Roads became rooftops. The shadow on the ground transformed into a perfect, jet-black silhouette of Sarah, expanding to impossible dimensions. The final 1,000 feet brought a wall of wind that carried the metallic scent of ozone and decay. Below, the shadow cooled into absolute midnight, centered on an empty parking lot outside an abandoned warehouse. It doesn't drift with the sun, but remains a fixed point in the void. Sarah plummets toward it, the air growing frigid and thin around her. A metallic scent, like ozone and old iron, fills her nostrils. She doesn't brace for impact. She does something else entirely. She relaxes her entire being, attempting to merge with the presence. She wills her consciousness to flow into the unnatural stillness around her, to become part of the void itself. It's a surrender, not a fight. An invitation for the unknown to recognize her as kin. And then, the wind, the only constant sound for hours, cuts out abruptly, completely. A moment of pure, silent suspension. Then, impact. Not a crash, but a deep, soft thump, like a giant pillow hitting the ground, followed by the sickening crackle of spreading asphalt. As the dust clears, she lies in a person-shaped depression, and the space where her shadow should be is now just empty pavement. She was whole. The impact came not on concrete, but where her shadow had been moments before. When rescuers arrived, they found her conscious in that strange depression, breathing the scent of ozone and hot asphalt. Traumatized but unbroken, she lay surrounded by the impossible physics of her survival. Medical reports showed no spinal damage, just severe contusions and traumatic shock. The sole survivor emerged from the wreckage, as if by some impossible grace. Investigators whispered about a miracle of physics, a fluke of aerodynamic fortune. But in the morgue's cold silence, the metallic scent of blood mixed with ozone hinted at forces beyond calculation. Doctor, you're 1 in a billion, Sarah. A literal 1 in a billion. Sarah, where is it? Doctor, where's what? The afternoon sun blazed through Sarah's modest marble living room window, casting stark, elongated shadows across the floor. She sat motionless, her own shadow stretching out before her like a dark, silent companion. The air in the room felt thin and electric, holding a breath she couldn't quite release. And in that quiet, sun-drenched moment, Sarah simply lived. But the story didn't end. The harmless lag she'd grown accustomed to had vanished completely. Now her shadow behaves with flawless precision, obeying every law of light and physics without deviation. It moves with mechanical perfection, a dark twin that mirrors her every motion without the slightest hesitation. It's normal now, and that's what makes it terrifying. And that is what terrifies. The moment she notices her shadow on the floor, it appears perfectly normal. A simple, dark shape cast by the light. Sarah slowly raises her hand, her breath catching in her throat. The shadow raises its hand in perfect, chilling unison. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. For Sarah now knows with absolute certainty, her survival was no accident of physics. In that final instant, her own shadow intercepted the impact meant for her flesh. It served its purpose. Sarah. It spent my entire existence lagging, hoarding all that potential energy. It accumulated decades of delayed presence, all for that singular, terrible moment. Her shadow spent its last essence to pull her back from the grave, leaving her with this flawless, mundane silhouette. Now Sarah Jennings moves through her silent days, accompanied only by this hollow replica. A single, unanswerable question coils in her mind, cold and persistent. If her shadow was her savior, what nameless thing walks with her now? Her face holds a deep, private sorrow for herself and for what has vanished. Did she merely lose a neurological anomaly? Or did a piece of her very soul, which loved her enough to take her place, perish instead? The final image. Sarah sits in perfect stillness as the sun arcs across the sky. Her new, ordinary shadow slowly stretches across the floor. A silent, perfect stranger.